He called me bro. Hand on my shoulder, smile like we'd known each other since Little League, he said. Bro, I hope you don't mind. She's been leaning on me a lot. You know, healing stuff. I shook his hand. Firm. Calm. Like my bones weren't vibrating under my skin. Like I wasn't calculating how many weeks I'd been sleeping in the guest room while my wife, my actual wife, was out healing with this guy who thought I was her friend. Not her husband. Not the man who held her hair back when the chemo got bad. Not the one who memorized her medication schedule when she could barely lift her head. No, just bro. Let me rewind. Because stories like this don't start with explosions. They start with cracks. 2 years ago, Anna lost her sister. Sudden. Car accident. No last words, no closure. It was the kind of grief that rearranges the furniture inside a person. She started therapy, journaling, long solo walks. Then came the retreats, trauma healing spaces, she called them. I supported all of it. Booked the first one for her myself. Sent her with new hiking boots and a handwritten letter tucked in her bag. Find peace. I'll be here when you're ready to come home. The first time she came back, she was lighter. That's the only word for it. Like someone had peeled off 10 layers of grief and left just her eyes behind. But she was quieter too. Distant. She smiled, but it didn't reach me. I told myself healing was a journey. I told myself to be patient. The second retreat was different. Longer. 3 weeks. No phones. No contact. She returned with a necklace I'd never seen before. Some kind of polished stone wrapped in copper. I asked where it came from. She looked down at it, fingers tracing the shape, and said, a friend made it. Someone from the retreat. He's helping me process things. I said, that's good. And she smiled in that careful way people do when they don't want to tell you the whole story. The name came up a week later. Jamie. Short for James, I assumed. She started referencing him the way people reference a favorite podcast. Casually, often, and with that faint air of admiration. Jamie said something brilliant today. Jamie's helping me understand why I carry so much guilt. Jamie thinks I've been too selfless in my relationships. That one stung. Not because I disagreed. Maybe I had leaned on her too much over the years. But the fact that she needed Jamie to see it, that she brought it to him before she brought it to me. I asked her, gently, if I could come with her to one of these healing sessions. Not to intrude. Just to understand the process, to be part of her growth. She smiled again, that same tight, filtered smile, and said, it's not really for couples. It's more personal work. So I waited. And while she healed, I shrank. The conversations changed. Her eyes wandered more during dinner. The silences between us grew longer, thicker. I thought about pushing, about demanding answers. But grief has no map, and I didn't want to be the man who made it about himself. Then came the night I met Jamie. She'd invited a few people from her healing circle over for a backyard fire pit. I helped set up, lit the torches, chopped wood, laid out snacks, played the host like always. Jamie arrived late. Cargo jacket, beaded bracelets. That effortless swagger that comes from someone who's been told he's wise one too many times. He walked up to me like we were old friends. Bro, he said, gripping my hand. I've heard so much about you. Anna's lucky. Most partners aren't nearly as chill about this stuff. Yeah, I said, I guess I'm chill. He smiled. Seriously, man. You've given her so much space. That takes real strength. Most guys would have made it all about them. My throat tightened. My brain tried to speak, but the only thing that came out was a nod. Space. That's what I'd given her. And someone else had walked right into it. Jamie didn't know. He truly didn't. Because when she talked about me, she didn't say husband. She didn't say partner of 10 years. She said someone from my past I'm still untangling from. I found that out later. But that night, I played along. I laughed when Jamie told stories. I watched her laugh at his jokes, her hand resting on his knee like it had always belonged there. I went inside to grab more drinks, and I stared at my reflection in the microwave door. I looked like a man hosting a party for the guy slowly erasing him. I stood there for 10 minutes, pretending to look for the wine opener I'd already put on the table. I wasn't ready to go back outside. Not yet. Because that's when the realization hit me. The kind that doesn't come like a flash, but more like a slow fog settling into your lungs. This wasn't grief anymore. She wasn't healing. She was rebuilding. And I was no longer part of the blueprint. The word healing became a weapon she never had to raise. It just hung in the air like incense, soft, untouchable. Anytime I questioned where she'd been, or why she wasn't home till midnight, she'd put a hand on my chest and say, "Please, I'm trying. You know that." And I'd nod. Because what kind of man argues with healing? But deep down, I started keeping a private list. Not of wrongs, not of names, but moments. Little ones. A text from Jamie that popped up on her phone at 2 a.m. Reading simply, "You up?" Her response was already sent before I could read it. Deleted before I could screenshot. But my gut logged it. Or the way she started showering before coming home instead of after. The way her playlists changed, his kind of music, not hers. Not ours. The folk stuff she used to roll her eyes at. Now it was all over the car's Bluetooth history. I wasn't naive. I was just slow to admit what my body already knew. One morning, I watched her from the upstairs window. She was in the driveway, sitting in Jamie's car. Not talking, not kissing, just sitting in silence. Their faces turned toward each other, like two people syncing up without words. She came back inside like nothing had happened. That night, I asked her, "Do you still want this? Us?" She didn't lie. Not really. She just gave me one of those diplomatic answers. "I'm trying to figure out who I am. I don't want to make promises while I'm still in pain." Still in pain. That was the loophole she kept crawling through. The thing that made everything excusable. Emotional unavailability? Pain. Disconnection? Pain. Another man being the one she called at midnight when she had a breakdown instead of me? Also pain. She said Jamie was part of her processing. That he understood things I couldn't. That their connection was spiritual, not romantic. But I'd seen the way she adjusted her shirt before going to see him. That wasn't spiritual. That was preparation. I started sleeping in the guest room 2 weeks later. She didn't fight it. She said nothing, in fact. She just left a folded blanket at the foot of the bed and started closing the master door at night. And here's the thing people don't tell you about heartbreak. It's not the loud, crashing stuff that breaks you. It's the politeness. It's brushing your teeth in the same mirror and pretending you're not strangers. It's eating dinner in silence and saying, "Pass the salt," like that's all either of you need. One Friday evening, I came home to find her gone. No note, no heads up. Just a text 2 hours later. Staying at the retreat center for the weekend. Need space to breathe. I didn't reply. Instead, I drove. Not to the center, not to Jamie's place, just aimlessly. I watched the city blur past the windshield until it all felt like static. I ended up at the parking lot of the grocery store where we'd had our first fight, years ago. She wanted almond milk. I brought home soy. She laughed, then cried. Then we talked until the lights in the store flickered off for the night. That night, we were still choosing each other. Still reaching. Now, I wasn't sure if she'd even notice if I left. 3 days later, she came back. No apology. Just a long shower and a sigh as she dropped her bag on the floor. And then, the next morning, something snapped. She handed me her phone by accident, switched with mine while we both reached for the counter. I saw it before she realized. A pinned thread. Jamie. Not just Jamie. Jamie Dizzy. That emoji was a wound. A stupid, glowing, unforgivable wound. The last message. "I wish last night never ended. You felt like home." And underneath, her reply. "Then maybe we're not just healing anymore." She saw my face before I said anything. She reached out, panicked. "Wait, listen, it's not what you think." I stepped back. "Don't. Please. Just don't." The thing about betrayal is, it doesn't need proof. It doesn't care about timing. All it needs is one sentence that's too soft to say to anyone else. One message that makes someone else feel like home while you're sleeping beside the person who built it. She broke down. Tears, apologies, confusion. Said it was emotional confusion. That it never got physical. That she was just searching for something safe. I wanted to scream. To yell at her. To ask how Jamie could possibly be safer than me, after all we'd weathered. After everything I stayed through. But I didn't. I just sat on the edge of the bed and said, "Does he know you're married?" She shook her head. "Does he know I'm not just some supportive ex you're unpacking?" Silence. I nodded. He called me bro. That broke her. Really broke her. She collapsed on the carpet and cried into her hands, the way she had after her sister's funeral. But this time, I didn't pull her into my lap. I didn't rub her back or whisper that it would be okay. Because it wouldn't be. Not this time. The next morning was the quietest we'd ever had. No footsteps. No coffee. Just the hum of a refrigerator and two people pretending they weren't grieving something already dead. She stayed in the bedroom. I stayed in the kitchen. I kept wiping the same counter spot over and over like I could scrub away the image of her fingers, typing "you felt like home." By noon, I packed a bag. Not because I was done, but because I knew I had to find silence somewhere she wasn't rewriting the truth. She didn't ask me to stay. She only said, "Please don't hate me." And I didn't. That was the worst part. I wanted to. Hate is clean. Hate is a knife. What I felt was worse, something weightless and hollow, like trying to carry smoke in your hands. I checked into a small motel near the coast, the kind with scratchy towels and dim lighting, where no one asks why a grown man checks in alone with eyes that haven't slept. I laid on the bed with the TV off and stared at the ceiling. For hours. On the third day, I got a message from Jamie. Yeah, him. I don't know if she told him the truth or if he found it some other way, but there it was, blinking on my phone like a dare. Jamie. Hey, I just found out. I had no idea you two were still married. I thought. I'm sorry, man. Really. No excuses. No defense. Just sorry, man. And man was worse than bro. I didn't reply. He followed up an hour later. Jamie, if you ever want to talk, I'm here. Not as whatever I was. Just one guy to another. I know this must feel like hell. I sat there with the message open, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. What would I even say? You took what was mine. She gave you what she promised me. You're a stranger who knew how to listen better than I did. Or maybe, she let you in because I was too busy waiting outside. But I said nothing. Not to him. Not to her. Not to anyone. Instead, I drove. Back to our old apartment. The first place we lived before the mortgage, before the guest rooms and separate spaces. I sat in front of the building for over an hour. A different couple walked in. Young, laughing, her head on his shoulder like the world hadn't touched them yet. I used to be him. And she used to be the girl who whispered "we'll be okay" against my chest on nights when the rent was late and her dad was dying and the world was too heavy. She wasn't a monster. She was lost. And I waited so long for her to find herself that I forgot to find me. The divorce was quiet. Mutual. No lawyers needed. We didn't fight over the house. She let me keep it. Said it held too many mirrors. On the final day, we sat across from each other at the kitchen table. One pen. 2 copies. She hesitated before signing. Looked up. Eyes red but dry. I didn't mean to fall, she said. Not like that. I nodded. I know. Do you think we could have made it if things were different? I almost answered. Almost said yes. Almost said no. But instead I looked at the space between us, once filled with vows, now just silence, and said, I think we tried. She signed. So did I. No tears. Just the weight of 2 people releasing a rope they'd held for too long. I never spoke to Jamie again. I didn't need to. He was never the villain. He just showed up at the wrong time, with the right words, when I had none left to give. But sometimes, when I'm out walking alone, and the air smells like her shampoo, or I hear a laugh that sounds like hers from the back of a coffee shop, I wonder if she ever really came back from that first loss. If maybe, somewhere deep down, I became a stand-in for the life she was supposed to have, but never did. And maybe Jamie wasn't the start of the betrayal. Maybe he was just the end of the waiting. Epilogue. A friend once asked me if I'd ever forgive her. I said yes. Not because she deserved it. Not because I'm noble. But because holding on hurts more than letting go. Healing isn't a place. It's a passage. She said she was healing. So I waited. But in the end, I wasn't her destination. Just a rest stop she'd already passed.